This is Ken Lambert, Dothan Wolves color analyst on 96.9 The Legend, and you are tuned in to the Phillip Jordan Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. I am Phillip Jordan, in studio host and producer of Dothan Wolves football on 96.9 The Legend and Auburn writer for the Auburn Wire at USA Today. On today's podcast, we are going to be looking at Auburn's opponent, the Oklahoma Sooners. Auburn will be traveling to Norman, Oklahoma on Saturday to take on the Sooners in the SEC opener for both teams. I think it's a pivotal game for both teams to start off 1-0 in the SEC, kind of an SEC that's kind of up in the air right now, kind of figuring out who are the true contenders in this conference. And joining me in a few moments to preview Oklahoma, we'll talk about the 3-0 start, how they match up with Auburn, and just overall the ceiling for this team. Joining me will be Tyler McComas. He is the host of The Rush on the Ref from 3 to 6 p.m. there in Norman, Oklahoma. So we will dive in a good 25-minute conversation with him about the Oklahoma Sooners. And then after that, I will give my pick on the game. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I'll read it on a future edition of the show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you're just a straight-up hater or an Alabama fan. You can also check out the show over on my YouTube channel, Phillip Jordan Sports. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and leave a comment on the video. I'll read that on a future edition as well. You can hit me up on social media at pjordansports. You can also email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. Now let's jump into it with our featured guest. All right, everybody, joining me on the show today, we're going to look at the Oklahoma side of this Auburn-Oklahoma matchup. It's going to be a fun one on Saturday. Joining me is Tyler McComas. You can check him out on The Rush on the Ref from 3 to 6 p.m. Out there in Norman, Oklahoma. And Tyler, I appreciate you taking some time and talking about the Sooners with us.
Man, it's going to be a lot happier tone than if you would have reached out a year ago. 3-0 start. They've looked good at the most important positions for the most part outside offensive line, but happy to do it because this is a huge week and a huge buildup here in Norman.
I really feel like for both teams, this could end up being a pivotal game for both. I know for Oklahoma, it's a big game. You're at home, SEC opener for them. You've got to win against Michigan, and then you're off. Then you have an off week, then you play Kent State out of the MAC before you kind of jump into more SEC games. And just from the Auburn side of things, you're going back-to-back at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M before you hit your off week. So, to me, just for both teams, it just feels like every game's important. Every game means a lot. But this one really, I feel like, could be one of those jumping-off points for both teams for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a huge win one way or the other. And this was a game that at SEC Media Day before the year, I heard a lot of, this is a tarmac game. This is a tarmac game. The loser of this game is, going to be on the hot seat and going to get fired. Well, I think so far, and we're very early in the season, Brent Venable's hot seat, at least the view nationally, has cooled down quite a bit. And all of that Hugh Freeze stuff where it felt like it was a disaster because he's golfing and here's him yelling at Jackson Arnold. A lot of that has cooled down because Auburn went to Baylor and looked so impressive. So I don't think necessarily that the loser of this game is in jeopardy of getting fired in 3 weeks or anything. But I think the way that you said it is perfect. It's a great jumping off point for one of these teams. And let's be honest, the SEC it's wide open right now. It's as wide open of a league as I think that we've seen it in quite some time. And I don't know if the winner of this game on Saturday, people have number one in their power poll, but whoever wins this game on Saturday, you got to say, man, that's maybe one of the best 3 teams in the league. And this team has a legitimate chance to make it to Atlanta. I think it's that big of a game here early on.
Yeah, it is. Both teams kind of have similar resumes. Auburn beat Baylor, and then Oklahoma welcomed Michigan, and they beat them. And you're right, because at the top of the SEC, it's like we can pinpoint all these teams that are best, LSU, Texas, whoever, they all have warts. I mean, they all have deficiencies. And now we look at the team that was the worst team in the conference last year, Mississippi State. They knocked off Arizona State. They look a whole lot better. I mean, Vanderbilt was a 6-6 team. They look like, hey, if things fell right, they might could be in competition for a playoff spot. And Maybe the championship game. I don't know. Maybe I'm overreaching on that one, but you're right. It's a wide open league, and every one of these conference games matter.
I don't know. Like we've certainly seen great legendary teams at the top of the SEC before. Like 2019 LSU, I got to see them up close. That's maybe the greatest college football team I've ever seen up close with my own eyes. Several Alabama teams, Georgia teams, Auburn had a team in 2010 that was elite. So we've seen elite teams in the SEC before. I don't see that team today. I don't think the SEC has that team. But what I do think the SEC has is it's probably as deep 1-16 as we've ever seen it before. Because you're right, like Mississippi State, they're not even in the same ballpark as what they already have more wins than what they had a year ago. So it's as deep as the league has ever been. There's not an elite team at the top, which signals to me that it's going to be highly entertaining week in and week out, that you're going to see big upsets every single week. And I think in a lot of ways, this league is going to beat itself up because there's not those elite teams. It's always a fun league, but it's going to be fascinating to see how it unfolds this year, and including on Saturday.
Looking at Oklahoma with the 3-0 start, with the wins. Of course, I mentioned Michigan was in there. They just beat Temple on the road this past Saturday. Obviously, the change in the offense with John Mateer coming in with his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle coming over from Washington State. What has been the big difference with this team offensively that you've seen this year versus last year with him at quarterback and with Arbuckle at offensive coordinator?
A true identity, an offensive coordinator that knows what he wants to do. I think from the outside, if you look at OU's offense from this year to last year, and I know that we'll get into Jackson Arnold, but the biggest improvement that you probably say is, Jackson Arnold's had a nice start at Auburn, but just based on last year to this year, the biggest improvement that OU's made is at quarterback. Mm-hmm. Maybe. I tend to think that the biggest improvement from last year to this year is an offensive coordinator. They had a guy at OC, first year as the offensive coordinator, who was on the 2000 national championship team. And like any other SEC town, if you're a guy that won a national championship here, you're a legend around here forever. So the fact that you were on the last national championship team and you got fired halfway through the season in year one, I think that kind of tells you just how bad it truly was. So you went out and got the young up-and-comer, and Ben Arbuckle's good, man. I think he's really, really good, at least through 3 games. So they have an identity. They know what they want to do, but they also have a quarterback that can run the system as well. So I would say that those are the 2 things that are the biggest changes, along with they're not decimated with injuries at wide receiver this year. They're banged up a little bit on the offensive line, but they actually have dudes available at wide receiver this year. So it's not just one thing that you can pinpoint to as to why the offense has looked so much better up to this point. It's several things. It's injury, it's offensive coordinator, it's quarterback. There's a lot of reasons why it's looked so much better than it did a year ago, and why this team has been able to play some complementary football, which you didn't see really at all last year throughout the first 3 games.
Yeah, and you mentioned the wide receiver room. I was going to say, from a guy that was watching Oklahoma from afar and look at some stuff when Jackson Arnold did come to Auburn, I feel like for any quarterback, that was going to be a tough situation forever. When your top 6 wide receivers go down, basically. But They rebuilt that. Tight end Jaron Connect, if I'm saying the name right, he's a big play. I watch highlights of this team. You're seeing them catching balls over the middle. You've got Deion Burks, who was a returning player, Southern Illinois wide receiver. Lewis there. How do you grade kind of how these receivers have been playing within the offense?
I would grade them pretty high, especially when you're looking at last year. If you're just looking at that, it feels like it's the greatest wide receiver core to ever exist, just based on last year. But they, one of the biggest, I think the 2 biggest question marks going into the year personnel-wise, offensive line and then tight end. Tight end was a disaster last year. Like everything else, it was put in a terrible situation to succeed. And a lot of people were worried about tight end. Tight end's been good this year because of Jaron Canick. Now, it started off as a fun story. Here's a guy that came in as a linebacker. It didn't necessarily work out for him. So kind of in his final year of college football, let's move him to tight end, where he really played on the offensive side in high school, and see how it works out. And I thought that it would be a fun story. Oh, cool, the depth chart comes out, and he's going to be the starter for game 1. Expecting him to make some plays, but not expecting him to have the impact that he's had. He leads the team through the first 3 games in receiving yards for the squad. And it's not by accident. It's not like, well, the OC's so good and the opponents are so bad that they're just scheming him wide open. There's an opening drive against Michigan, a 3rd and 7, where OU picks it up because he makes an incredible one-handed catch over the middle, and that ends up scoring a touchdown. That was actually a huge play in the game. Kanik is super fast, really good in the open field, and I think he leads all SEC tight ends in receiving yards up to this point. So it initially started as a fun story. Oh, here's a cool feel-good story for a guy that a lot of people love around here. Now it's, well, I expect him to have 3 to 6 catches every single game and somewhere north of 60 yards. Like, he's a real weapon in this offense, and he's only going to get more and more comfortable as things go on. Deion Burks, who was one of those injured guys last year, he is what I thought he was going to be, super explosive player. Still want to see him kind of get loose a little bit more down the field. Isaiah Satania, transfer from Arkansas, has been solid. Keontez Lewis, a transfer, has been good, but he got his bell rung last week against Temple, so we'll see if he's available. They haven't been playing a lot of receivers. They've been playing really kind of mainly a 3-man group, but those guys have been very productive in the passing game, and I don't think it's the best receiving core in the SEC, but it's good enough. It's a very solid receiving core that can do some really nice things for you.
Yeah, and when you have a quarterback like John Mateer, he can cover up some things. He can make that group better. That's what you want out of your quarterback, to make the whole team better. And I think that's what Oklahoma has with him.
Yeah, they just have a dude, and you know it when you have it. There's just like last year, it would be 3rd and 5, and I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, how in the world are they going to pick up a 3rd and 5? It would be the biggest miracle on earth if this offense is able to get 6 yards to pick up a 3rd and 5. I mean, you just had no hope whatsoever. There's 3rd and 19 on Saturday, granted against Temple, but they weren't picking up 3rd and longs against Temple last year. They were 1 for 11 on 3rd down, 3rd and 19 on the first drive, and they pick it up. It's just, he's able to extend plays with his feet. He's got arm talent. He's got confidence. He is the leader that they needed. Is he the greatest quarterback that OU's had? No, but he was the perfect quarterback for OU at the perfect time. And what I mean by that is they didn't have any leaders last year. No one was confident enough to step up in that role. He walked in day one with the swagger and the confidence and said, I got this. Just follow me. And he's been that type of player. And he's also super effective in the run game as well. Ran the ball a ton against Michigan, had a long touchdown run against Temple on Saturday. He's a dude, and he's the reason why you got a chance every single Saturday, because OU's got one of the premier quarterbacks in the SEC.
So I wanted to, before we move to their defense, ask you, their run game, because he is the second leading rusher. Torrey Blaylock has been the leading guy for this team, freshman. I know they bring in Jaden Ott, who Auburn has seen before when he was at Cal. Any concerns, worries, offensive line, running back, and he talked about offensive line at the top.
Yeah, O-line, they were solid against Michigan. I think you actually, I thought that they were good against Michigan. It kind of felt like they found their 5 in that game, which has been a problem for the past couple of years, finding their 5 and establishing some continuity. They found their 5, and one of those 5 is the highest-rated offensive lineman in last year's class, Michael Fasusi. Like, I think that dude is going to be an absolute star, and that was his introduction into college football, and he played very well against Michigan. Well, he didn't play last week. I think he'll be back against Auburn. Brent Venables, 20 minutes before you and I are talking, announced that Troy Everett, one of their captains, is going to be out for the year. So they're just not super healthy up front. I think that they can be a solid offensive line, and really that's all they need to be. Like, we're not asking them to be an elite offensive line, because I think you're good enough elsewhere to be a good enough offense if you're just solid up front on the offensive line. But they are dealing with some injuries right now, which is a concern, and how much success will this Auburn defensive line have is going to be a huge question mark to me. But in the run game, yeah, it's Torrey Blaylock, the true freshman, man. I mean, he's by far and away the best back, the most elusive back, and he's not even 100% right now. I mean, he had a serious shoulder injury in game 1, and he's come back game 2 and game 3 less than 100%. Look great. SEC Freshman of the Week this past week, or this week, I should say. Jaden Ott's been the real surprise and the big disappointment, and one of the main topics of conversation right now, because he's not getting any run whatsoever. He's not out there. Why is that? Well, he was injured a lot in training camp, and Brent Venables kind of gave one of those answers after Saturday's win over Temple, where you read between the lines, which is he's not bringing it every single day. He's not available every single day. And even though they paid him a lot of money in the transfer portal to come to Oklahoma and be this guy, there's just better running backs that they have on the roster. Now, I'm not giving up on him. I think that as we move forward, he can be a factor at some point. But dude's going to have to change the mentality a little bit, it sounds like, if he wants to be a true force in this run game. Because right now, Torrey Blaylock is clearly better. Javonte Barnes is clearly better. And I think Xavier Robinson is clearly better at this point as well. It's not an elite run game, but I think it can be a good enough run game when you couple with how good your quarterback is and how good your defense is.
Yeah, and if they're getting a lot of yards per carry, maybe not a lot of carries, but a lot of yards per carry, that keeps the defense honest. You just can't keep on the quarterback and what he can do. This defense, through 3 games, leading the SEC 6.3 points per game, 181 yards a game, only allowed 1 touchdown. I don't care who you're playing. That is an accomplishment in today's college football. They gave up 146 on the ground against Michigan, but then I looked into it. At first, when I saw that stat, I was okay, they had success. Not really. 75 yards from Justice Haynes, the former Alabama running back, helped out with that. They had replaced Danny Stutzman at linebacker, but Auburn members Kip Lewis very well from last year's game with the pick 6 and all that. When you look at this defense overall, what has been working for this group?
I mean, everything. They're just really more than anything. It's just a dominant defensive line. And OU had some real deficiencies on the offensive side of the ball when Brent Venables showed up. And it's crazy to look up now and say, I wouldn't trade OU's defensive line for anybody else's in the SEC. And I'm not sure I would trade their defense with anybody else's in the SEC. It is violence, man. It's not that they just make plays. It is violence. Kendall Daniels had a huge hit on one of Michigan's wide receivers and stood over the top of him. They had Michael Boganowski come in with a huge set. I mean, they just have all these different players who come in and had these huge hits. You watch OU on film and just say they completely destroy an offensive line and they completely destroy a quarterback game in and game out. You know, it's just they never allow you to get comfortable because at the point of attack on their defensive line, they're in the backfield just continuously. And yeah, they do lead the SEC in points per game, but if not for the offense, the OU defense has 2 shutouts in its first 3 games. The only reason that Illinois State had a field goal is because John Mateer threw a pick like inside the 25-yard line. The defense got a 3 and out, and Illinois State kicked a field goal. The only reason that Temple got 3 points on Saturday is because John Mateer threw a pick. Temple took over inside the 20-yard line. The defense 3 and out again, and Temple kicked a field goal. Like, if not for that, OU has only allowed 7 total points on the year. And like you said, the 1 touchdown that they've let up was kind of on a broken play. They misfit a run. Justice Haynes runs 75 yards for a touchdown. I thought that they would be good. It's not surprising to me that they're good. It's surprising how good that they've truly been throughout the first 3 games because it's suffocating. It's 9 3 and outs and like 13 possessions for Temple on Saturday. They don't let up. They come in waves. The depth that they have on the defensive line is just ridiculous, man. It's a really, really fun defense to watch, and they get after you. They get after the run game. They get after a quarterback. I know they haven't played the greatest competition, and they'll play better teams moving forward, but I just would be shocked if this defense shows a real letdown as we move forward.
So jumping into the game, this probably be a spot where I just, hey, what's your thoughts on Auburn? But I'm going to bring it a little bit more, narrow it a little bit more. Obviously, the storyline is going to be Jackson Arnold returning to Oklahoma on Saturday. Just from what you've seen from Auburn the first 3 games, and particularly him, what's been some takeaways for you?
Well, I think one of the issues for him last year was it didn't feel like he made great reads in the zone read game. Like maybe some things were there, but he wasn't making the right reads with it. And it seems like so far he's doing a much better job of it. I mean, we were all watching that Friday night against Baylor when he was running all over the place. Now, at the same time, we're saying, what was Baylor doing defensively, and why did they stay in that defense the entire game? But Jackson Arnold running the ball has looked really good. I think from our perspective here, it's, does Auburn not trust him to throw the ball? Are they not really trusting him to throw the ball downfield? Like, we know that they've got good receivers, but it feels more like Jackson Arnold's been an option quarterback than a guy in the SEC who's slinging it all over the field. I think Auburn will hit on some big running plays, not a 75-yarder per se, but they'll have some success on the ground, but not enough to win the football game. We're going to have to see a different level of Jackson Arnold that we've seen so far this year, because he's going to have to find a way to stretch an OU defense. And maybe he is. Maybe he's going to be able to with some of the good receivers, but I don't know. Maybe it's by design. Maybe we're off on this, but it seems like Hugh Freeze just hasn't really let him really unleash down the field up to this point. That's not going to fly against an OU defensive line that is really, really good. They're going to have to find some success in the passing game if Auburn's going to be able to score enough points to win this game. Now, I don't think Auburn needs to score 35 points to win this game, but I do think that they may need to score in the 20s to win this football game.
Yeah, and that's been the thing with me. I'm kind of like 50-50 on what's going on with them. Or is Hugh Freeze hiding the explosive passing game for Oklahoma? Because against Baylor, they were playing two high safeties. You just took what they gave you. But against Ball State and South Alabama, you should be, if you want to hit a big play on them, you should be able to, but they haven't done it. So that's been a big thing with Auburn. So it's kind of like with me, I'm like, is he hiding it or can they not do it? But I was talking to somebody earlier in the week. I said, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it against Oklahoma, because you just can't run for over 200 yards against them. It's not going to happen. On the offense, when Oklahoma's on offense and then Auburn's on defense, Auburn is tied for the league lead with 11 sacks. You got Keldrick Faulk. Keon Crawford's really been a surprise. They have Jared Smith there too as well, and the linebacker. But Auburn's given up a lot of yards in the pass game this year. Guys are just getting open on their defense, the secondary. What's your take when Oklahoma's on offense versus the Auburn defense?
I mean, I think that you're going to see Oklahoma try to establish a run game, but I would see them. I think OU is going to continue to do what they've done a lot of, including on Saturday. You're going to see them hit some crossers. You're going to see them throw some tunnels, some jet sweeps. I mean, I think that they're going to do a lot of short things to get their playmakers out in space and get yards that way. I don't think, unless Auburn says, let's go man-to-man and we'll test you down the field, I don't think that OU is just going to hit on a ton of big plays down the field. Maybe they will. But I think OU is really going to work the middle of the field and kind of the perimeters out there, like I said, to get those guys in space. If OU is able to run the ball consistently, I think Saturday is going to be really, really tough for Auburn. I think Auburn's got to shut down the run game and got to get pressure on John Mateer. The problem is, even when you get pressure on John Mateer, he's just got that ability to escape pressure, get outside, and find somebody down the field on a big play. Feels like it's Jaron Canick most often. But Auburn's going to have to control the line of scrimmage, and they're going to have to prevent OU from getting kind of short stuff. And their corners and safeties going to have to tackle well for Auburn is what I would say on Saturday.
Yeah, and that's been an issue too. I'm going to ask one more thing on the offense, because some people probably look at with Auburn's wide receivers, Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton, and you alluded to it. They have the ability to be game breakers. How do you think Oklahoma is going to deal with them defense? Do you think they'll do like a lot of teams do, play two high safeties, or do you think you could see them creep up? Maybe Auburn might get some one-on-one shots.
I think Auburn's going to get some one-on-ones for sure. I think OU is going to, man, they throw some crazy things out defensively, and that's what you get with Brent Venables. I mean, say what you want about him as a head coach, and some of that has definitely been fair. The guy's a defensive mastermind. I mean, he had Bryce Underwood, in a really, really tough spot. I think that they're going to mix up a lot of things. I think that they're going to rely on their front four getting home and getting pressure, which I think that they can do. But I think that you're not going to see just one particular thing. I think you're going to see them mix it up quite a bit. You're going to see some man. You're going to see some zone. You're going to see different pressures in different situations. And I think that what Brent Venables is going to do, and he's really downplayed, it's Jackson Arnold coming home. He's playing up. No, it's the SEC opener. It's OU against Auburn. Mm-hmm. I think that they're going to put this game on Jackson Arnold's show. I think OU is going to say, look, we're shutting down your run game. You're not getting with your traditional run game. You're not getting that stuff with the zone read. If Auburn's going to beat us, we're going to make Jackson Arnold beat us down the field, because we haven't seen him consistently do that this year. And frankly, we know a lot about this kid, and we don't have much confidence knowing him that he's going to be able to do it on our secondary. So I think that could put you in one-on-one spots for Auburn's offense, which means Cam Coleman and some of those other really good wide receivers are probably going to have to make some great one-on-one catches down the field. But I think OU is going to put a lot of pressure on Jackson Arnold, but also say, we'll give you some one-on-ones down the field, but we're going to make you make quick decisions in the passing game that will have to beat us.
I've come in with this game with the feeling, and look, even as a guy that covers Auburn, I hadn't decided who I'm picking with this one yet as we're recording. But I think the first quarter is key for both teams, and especially on the Auburn side, because there's no way you can't say that Jackson Arnold's not going to be keyed up to start this game. It's just, and I know there's probably no really hard feelings between him and Oklahoma. Just one thing I think was best for both to split. But it's still, I think the first quarter it's going to be one loss the first quarter. When you look at this game, if you don't give a prediction, you don't have to. But how do you think it plays out?
I really think that OU is going to have a strong defensive day. This is a lot to ask of Jackson Arnold. It is. I mean, this is a fan base that is really hyped right now. They've been waiting for this game, waiting to welcome Jackson Arnold. It's just going to be, not to say that he hasn't played in a tough environment before, he has. It's just going to be a different environment where he's going to feel that against a defense that's going to throw a lot of things at him. I mean, it really is going to be one of the better defenses that he sees all year long. I just don't think throwing the football, what I know now, that he's ready to take that on. So I think OU's defense is going to have a lot of success. But I also think Auburn's going to force a couple of turnovers. And I think it's going to be a close game. And I say OU gets a late score to pull away. I've got OU winning this game 27-14. I think it's definitely going to be interesting for the first three quarters. But I think ultimately it's a Jackson Arnold mistake that helps OU pull away for a 2-score win.
Okay, so what happened last year with Peyton Thorne pretty much just gave the game to Oklahoma.
Maybe to Kip Lewis again. I guess we'll see.
Funny story on that. Auburn was up by 2 scores. It was going to the fourth quarter, and me and now my fiance went to the Troy game. I live very close to Troy, so we went to that game. I said, okay, Auburn's going to win the way this game's been going. I get to the game, and a buddy of mine said, Auburn lost. I'm like, are you kidding me? And I said, did Peyton Thorne throw an interception? And they said, yes, he did, and it ran back.
Yeah.
So anyways.
I left Jordan Hare right before that. I mean, I'm talking 2 or 3 plays before that because I got a post-game radio show I got to do. We're doing it at one of the RV lots. So a lot of times I got to leave before the game, and Auburn had the ball, and I said, man, this game is over. We walk outside. We hear a loud roar. My wife says, well, Auburn just scored, and there's a TV right in front of us, and we see Kip Lewis running the other way. So we ran back into the stadium and kind of watched the end of that. But, yeah, I left, dude. I didn't even get to see it live, but it was shocking. It was definitely shocking.
Yeah, that's all I heard. And for the longest in the stadium at Troy, sometimes you don't have the best cell reception, so I couldn't even see the highlight. And then when I finally saw it, I was like, of course, that's just kind of Peyton Thorne for you. Real quickly, I've gone a few minutes over what I told you we were going to go. Just for the rest of the year, what do you see the ceiling for this Oklahoma team?
Well, I mean, I think the ceiling is this team can play in an SEC championship game. And I know that sounds crazy for a team that was 6-7 a year ago. But they've got one of the elite quarterbacks in the league, and they got maybe the best defense in the league. And that can take you a long way, especially with what we talked about in SEC that is it's right for the taking right now. You know, I don't think anyone stands clear above the rest of anybody else. So, and I feel the same way about the rest of college football. Like Ohio State, they're the number 1 team right now. I don't think that they're as good as they were last year. I don't think that they're without flaws as well. So I think their ceiling, if everything goes the right way, can be a championship contender, but they're a ways off from that. I mean, I think that's where they can get to, but they're not there right now. They've got to continue to prove it week in and week out. We can't be talking about that just because they beat Michigan and they shut down Illinois State and Temple, right? Like, you look good. Well, go prove it against Auburn. Go prove it in the SEC. But I feel like their ceiling is so high because they are good at a couple of the most important spots on the field. And until I see an SEC team or a couple of SEC teams really the cream rise to the crop a lot and really elevate their play, I think OU is right in the mix there at the top of teams that can get to Atlanta at the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And this Saturday is going to be a big one between these two. Really, like I said, set the tone perhaps for the rest of the year. And Tyler, it's been a lot of fun having you on. If the listeners, viewers want to check you out, where can they find you?
So a couple of places on YouTube. If you're an SEC softball fan, I do all softball content. Tyler on OU softball, out of OU softball, but college softball as well. And then, of course, my daily radio show, 3 to 6 p.m. on the Ref. We got a lot of listeners across the country, across the South, because we talk college football. KREF in the app stores where you can find it. I'm on from 3 to 6 in the afternoon. We love the sport. We're so happy to be in the SEC and not a basketball conference like the Big 12. It's where we're supposed to be. And, man, the road trips have been really fun thus far. They've been the trip last year at Auburn was one of the best road trips I've ever taken because Auburn is just a football town, man, on a Saturday. The people were so kind. I don't think Auburn gets enough credit for their tailgating scene. I will not miss a trip to Auburn once Oklahoma's there. I will promise you that. It's a great, great place. And I haven't been to Tuscaloosa since 2003. We'll be there this year. It's just a fun conference. It's a tough conference, but it's a fun conference to be in.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's great venues every week. You don't have to worry about that. Oh, maybe except when you go to Vanderbilt, but
Yeah.
It may not be a soundbite for them. But anyways, Tyler, I appreciate you coming on. I know we went a little bit longer than I told you, but I appreciate the time.
You bet. Anytime.
All right. Once again, thanks to Tyler McComas for coming on this edition of the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. Really had a lot of fun talking to him about Oklahoma getting his thoughts on the game. So he's got Oklahoma winning. And this has actually been a hard one for me all week because just thinking, I just wasn't enthusiastic what I saw at Auburn on Saturday. Being there in person at Jordan here. First half, I think they were fantastic. 28-9. I said this on the show early in the week. And they go in at halftime. You think, okay, they're going to score another touchdown or two, be at 42-9, pull this thing away, get some backups in. That didn't happen. They took the foot off the gas. They got a score 6-3. They looked like they sleepwalked through the second half. And obviously, it is a concern for a lot of people. We have not seen Auburn go down the field much with Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman, even Michael Simmons, all these guys they've got. Now, the running game's been really good for Auburn, but this is a game where they're not just going to be able to rely on that like they have before. Oklahoma's got great athletes, especially on the defense side of the ball. So, my keys to this for Auburn to win. Look, Jackson Arnold is going to have to throw for Auburn to win this game. And the big thing with him is going to be calming him down early because you just got to know, and they're going to say all the right things. He said all the right things. Hugh Freeze said all the right things, that he's going to have to be calmed down. He's going to be keyed up going into this first quarter. I just feel like that. So the first quarter is key. If Auburn can just keep the emotional part in check in that first quarter and just kind of play the game after that, I think they'll be fine. But Jackson Arnold's going to have to hit some big throws and not just these 10-yard routes they've been running. They're going to have to hit some big plays to Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton because I don't think Auburn can go on long drives against Oklahoma, not against this defense. I just don't think it's going to happen. They're going to need to get Jeremiah Cobb, Damari Austin going in a run game, but it's not going to be as easy for them guys getting it going as it has been against Baylor, Ball State, and South Alabama. And they're just going to have to hit the big play. And turnovers. You cannot turn the ball over in this game. We saw it happen last year with Peyton Thorne, pick six. It was over. Now, defensively for Auburn, you got to keep John Mateer. First, you got to keep him in the pocket. You cannot let him beat you with his legs. You got to keep him in the pocket. And I think something that could help Auburn out this game, there's some injury issues with the offensive line at Oklahoma. They're a little bit beat up. So Auburn has to get pressure on the quarterback. Especially, we need a big Keldrick Faulk game here. This is what Auburn needs, is a big Keldrick Faulk game. They have to get pressure on the quarterback there at Oklahoma. Throw up his speed up his passes, not throw up his passes, speed up his passes, and his decision making, and limit their run game, which I think Auburn can do. Auburn got some banged up players in the secondary. Jay Crawford, he's doubtful for the game. You also got the Champ Anthony injuries too as well. And Auburn just had some issues in the secondary. It's going to come out of that. And then at the end of the day, special teams. Who wins special teams in this game? That could be the deciding factor. It's going to be a close game. Oklahoma's a 6.5-point favorite. The under-over is 47.5. Look, early in the week, I was leaning Oklahoma here. I think Auburn's going to find a way to win because they have that experience going to Baylor, winning on the road. This is going to be a tight game. I think Auburn wins it barely at the end, like 23-20, 24-21, something like that. It's going to be a hard-hitting game. Defenses are going to have some moments. The offenses are going to have some moments. But I do think the Auburn passing game will hit some big plays in this one. So I'm going to go with Auburn to win 24-21 in the game, and it should be fun. And we'll be back next week to recap it all. Look ahead to the Texas A&M game next week as well. May have some shows earlier in the week than normal here on the pod just because of things I got going on next week. But that's my thoughts. Auburn's going to win that one. And that should be a fun week in the SEC. Not as big matchups we had last week, but it should be a fun weekend of football. You can follow me on social media at P Jordan Sports. You can check the podcast out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. And check out the show over on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. And if you're a Green Bay Packers fan, check out my Packers podcast, The Green and Gold Breakdown. Anyways, until next time, bye-bye. And War Eagle.